Hello and welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Swana, standing in for Clement Manyatela. Coming up on the show this evening, Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni speaks to us post the US-South African meeting. Kusela Tiko, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications, speaks to us following the Minister Malatsi's appearance in Parliament earlier. We also have political analyst Swana as well as Professor Justine Limpetlaw to explore that issue further. And we'll end off the show with the Democratic Alliance on the resolution on land expropriation. But first, my comment. The Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Malatsi has defended his policy directive to ease company transformation targets and some BBBEE requirements. Despite strong opposition to the proposals, the minister tried his best to convince MPs that this process is above board and has been going on for months now. While he agrees that the issues of transformation are key to South Africa's correction of past injustices, MPs have joined some South Africans on the apprehension about the curious timing.
I'm pretty clear that transformation is sacrosanct in our country, that it's a non-negotiable in order for the country to achieve its aspirations, but most importantly, to live to the provisions of the BBBEE Act as it was articulated and envisaged. So we are not attempting to open a special dispensation for Starlink or any other company or an individual. We are saying that the regulations in our sector must consistently make provision for the two choices that exist in any other sector and other aspects of the ICT when it comes to the role of multinationals, whether small or big, that the provisions around the option of a 30% local ownership or the pathway of equity equivalence must be consistently available, or at least for the authority to consider the consistency of that, of that option.
During a doorstop with journalists earlier, President Cyril Ramaphosa said this process will include the people.
This is not an emperor's land or a dictator's land where you do whatever you like. Our democracy dictates that it has to be by the will of the people, by the involvement of the people, and by their wishes.
But it seemed no amount of explanation could persuade some in the room that this is a step in the right direction.
It's a pity that we can't directly put a motion of no confidence on you as MPs and as a party, because you have delegated authority, you are appointed by the president. But in the light of that, these are my 4 questions to you. Why should we keep you as a minister of DCDT? When are you reversing this unlawful gazette? Who pressured you to do this? You are under oath. Who pressured you? Who instructed you to do this? Because you seem like an intelligent man. Maybe in the words of Rupert, you seem like a changed man. Who is pressuring you to do this? Tell us who in your department, the departments that you oversee, advised you to do this gazette, because we want to know them. Because those are the incompetent people that after we release you, we need to go after them as well. Finally, again, Mr. Minister, when can we expect your resignation letter?
To this, the minister responding, he is capable of doing his job and is not planning to resign. But while the minister says this directive is sound and was carefully considered, should this matter be challenged in court, will it stand legal scrutiny? Is this what South Africa really needs right now, given the challenges with redress over 30 years on? Should there be an overwhelming voice of those who are against this in the consultation process? Will the department withdraw this particular proposal? So you can share your thoughts with us by sending us a WhatsApp voice note on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name, surname, and where you are sending your voice note from. And also, please remember to keep it at 30 seconds. Also, of course, find us on X at Face the Nation SA. All right, take a short break. When we're back, we're going to be in conversation with Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. All right, let's now speak to Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, who is, of course, coming back from the trip there in the US, where Team South Africa, or the South African delegation, in fact, was in the Oval Office with the US delegation discussing quite a number of issues. Of course, you know the issues that have been in the public domain. Let's have this conversation now. The Minister joining us this evening. Minister, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Quite a lot to get through. There have been mixed reaction to what took place in the Oval Office. It was in the full glare of, the South Africans, and with some praising the president for how he handled that meeting, saying that his demeanor was quite the correct one, given the atmosphere in the room. And then you have others who are saying that, in fact, it was potentially disastrous, with the delegation simply not prepared for that particular meeting. What's your take as someone who was there? Minister, you're on mute.
Thank you for having us. I don't think that I don't think we're unprepared. We were very unprepared by all standards. Comparatively, those meetings can be very rough, and those meetings can be very disastrous. And our meeting was very cordial, both in the Oval Office and also during the luncheon. And for us, we had a mission to achieve. We wanted to set diplomatic relations with the US. We reset those. We wanted to make sure we've got a trade deal. We are finalizing that. And we wanted to remain in conversation with our largest trading partner. And that's what was important for us. Whether the theatrics and the other things matter for us, the president is used to a very rowdy parliament at home, at least. So for us, it was a very successful engagement. We had certain commitments from the US president, and for us, that's a big win.
Are you able to share some of those commitments with us?
It's a commitment that there will be a trade deal between South Africa and the US, and that there are areas of cooperation between South Africa and the US. And there's also an agreement that there can be conversations around AGOA, there can be conversations around SACU and the African Free Continental Trade Area. And also the fact that the US president has acknowledged that there cannot be a G20 without the US as part of the founding countries of the G20.
And are they agreeable then to coming to South Africa? Because the president has been saying that he doesn't want to hand over the presidency to an empty chair. Were they amenable to coming to South Africa, and in particular, the US president?
What I can tell you is that the US delegation is going to participate in the G20 preparatory meetings, and we are preparing for President Trump to come to the G20 Leaders Summit. It's their decision whether they come, but the President Trump, foremost in his mind, is the knowledge that and an acknowledgement that there's no G20 without the US, and also the acknowledgement that they have to take over the presidency of the G20 from South Africa. So they're a critical component of what we call the troika of the G20.
And one, of course, of the key conversations here, as you said, it's AGOA. And when you listen to the president even earlier on speaking to journalists, he speaks about the fact that does, trade now include this, or do you now discuss the possibility of maybe even looking past AGOA and restructuring it? Does it look like right now AGOA is going to survive and, still come back in its current form? Or can we see that the conversation actually takes place outside of AGOA and there is now a different kind of relationship when it comes to trade?
AGOA, as things stands, is in the Congress of the United States. It's been considered by Congress, and we need to give space for Congress to do what they have to do. There's a commitment that they will consult with all of us who are participants in AGOA either individually and also collectively. And on our side, we are working to prepare as African countries for the next AGOA engagement so that we move from the same point of view like we've done in the past.
And would you say that post that meeting, you were able to iron out some of the issues, especially the sticking issues around, the white genocide and all of that? Would you say that there is now a change in position by the U.S. administration, or is it still more of the same?
What I can say is that President Trump has confirmed that he had not made up his mind about a white genocide in South Africa. He just wanted an explanation. And remember, even in his own acknowledgement, he thought Mr. Malema was an official of government. And it was explained that, no, he's not an official of government. These are the policies of government of South Africa. And that we have the challenges of security like any other country. Including the US, they have their own challenges of security, and we are hell-bent on working to make sure that we secure all South Africans, irrespective of race, irrespective of gender, and irrespective of where they reside, whether you're in a rural area, in the suburbs, or in the townships.
Now, the president, when you read his letter yesterday, he does say, in his view, this was a successful meeting, elaborating on quite a number of points. And I would like to pick one. He says that the meeting also discussed exploring new opportunities for companies from South Africa and the US in each other's markets. And that also the delegation was able to update US officials on the ongoing structural reform process that is currently underway to improve the ease of doing business and facilitate a favorable investment climate. So some have kind of, read this to say, when you look at the ease of doing business, it might mean that the country may need to scrap or relax some of its own laws in order to be able to allow foreign investors to at least have a bit more of a slice of the pie in the country. Is that reading by some correct?
The South Africans have got very wild imaginations. So we've been undertaking reforms program through our Operation Volunteer program, which is now in phase 2. And that program has looked at what are the areas that have been bottlenecks in the reform program. Not only in the reform, but also for economic growth and job creation. And we've been unlocking those reforms. Some of them have necessitated amendments of our law. We've done amendments in the energy sector, and we've done amendments in the transport sector. We've done a number of amendments to allow the economy to open up for more participation. And so if those amendments have to be made, it will not be something new. The energy, I think I just forgot the naming, that has just been concluded now to allow the private sector to participate in the Minister Barbara Creecy has just also published a call for proposal to allow private sector to participate in the freight and rail sector as well. So it's nothing new to do amendments or legislative reforms to enable further investments in the country. But what we are and what the president is very committed to, and our country is committed to, is the transformation of this economy so that all South Africans can participate, and not only as others as consumers, as he said today during his oral replies in Parliament, but also as producers in the economy of the country.
You speak about transformation. There is, of course, that process that took place earlier on in Parliament as far as the Minister of Digital Communications is concerned. And he was there trying to explain his policy directive, that draft policy proposal that is now, of course, gazetted out for public comments. One of the things that the Minister says is that he understands that, the transformation agenda in this country is sacrosanct, but MPs not happy about it, saying that it kind of reverses, the transformation agenda of this country. When you look at the issue of Starlink and the fact that right now there is a view in the country that says that when you look at what he's doing right now, the timing of it coincides with what took place in the Oval Office. How do you respond to that?
I saw the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee who will speak about what the minister said in the Portfolio Committee. But what I need to clarify is that Starlink was not part of the discussions in the Oval Office or during the luncheon. And I've said it in the op-ed that I wrote about the trip itself, to say Do we need transformation? Do we need to introduce low orbit satellites in the country? Not only low orbit satellites, but satellites in the country. And I said yes. And I'm the first minister in the country to request ICASA to undertake a market study of how we're going to regulate the introduction of satellites in the country, both low orbit and the geo, which are the stationary ones, the higher ones, and what regulatory framework will be required. ICASA is now undertaking the public consultation based on that work of the market study that was done, instructed by me when I was still Minister of Digital Technologies in 2022. So that part of the technology introduction will be done. And in terms of the policies, and that has not changed, but South African policy around technology and anything, it's a multiplayer technology. That's why even when we introduced the mobile cellular phones, we didn't introduce only one, we introduced two. It was Vodacom and MTN, because you can't only have one. I've clarified in another interview that actually the Chinese have better technology than Starlink in terms of the LEOs. And I'm just speaking from a technology perspective. We can give you a lowdown in terms of that analysis if you want to go and discuss my PhD study on that. I can give you that. But the chairperson of the portfolio committee will talk to their discussions with the minister and their views strongly, because they are responsible for protecting that legislation, because that is the legislation passed by Parliament.
I'm curious. I think you and I should have a conversation about this PhD study. I think it'll make for some interesting television. But when you speak about, the issue of transformation seriously, is that even as we speak right now, one of our guests later on in the show is a partner in the GNU, and this is the Democratic Alliance, and they have reaffirmed their stance against the Expropriation Act, and they say that they do remain opposed to it, and they still are going to be pursuing legal action. How then does this continue to bode well for dynamics within the government of national unity?
Now you're forcing me to speak on behalf of the ANC. The ANC invited parties into the government of national unity, including the DA, and they agreed to be part of the government of national unity. It doesn't mean that there's agreement on policy positions. That's why there's a mechanism to resolve those disputes, like the clearinghouse mechanism that is set out to resolve the dispute, the differences in government, in policy approaches and so forth. Whether the DA takes that approach of using the clearinghouse or they go to court, for me, it's neither here nor there. They can go to court, they're entitled to go to court, whether they will win in court what they're claiming. And we must be clear, what the DA has taken the Expropriation Act that has been enacted to court for is not the nil compensation, is not the expropriation, is the consultation mechanism that was undertaken by the National Council of Provinces. So they must not come and say, no, we took it because we are opposing nil compensation, we are proposing the redistribution of land in the country. No, they've not taken it to court for that. They've taken it to court to say the representatives of the provinces in the NCOP were they correctly mandated, and that is a fact. You can go and check the papers. So they must not be that. They must not create a confusion or create a fuss because they want to score cheap political points with other people. We are committed to transformation. We are committed to make sure that South Africans of all kinds, more especially the previously disadvantaged, they can have an equal play to the economy of this country, and land is central to that, education is central to that, and access to universal health is central to that.
It's interesting because when one reads their papers, yes, the issue of the consultation process does come out, because they also raise concerns about some of the provinces that they argue should not have even been part of this process. But when you read some of what came out today, they say that they want to ensure that they protect property rights here, and continue to say that they want to make sure that the principle of compensation for expropriated property must be just and equitable as determined by a court of law. And they say that for them, this is quite central to their argument. So you're saying this is definitely not the case?
Bongiwe, have you looked at our constitution, what the constitution provides for land? The constitution in this country guarantees property rights for everyone. And in particular, this expropriation, land expropriation act that was done, it was done for public good, because they've been an abused wherein we need to extend services to people. And there have been people who are blocking and they charge exorbitant amounts. And nil compensation, one of their ministers, Dean Mafisen, have come out last week and say nil compensation is also equal to compensation. And what they say, you must not listen to what they say outside of court. Go and read the court papers. What are they challenging? So let's deal with the substance of the court legal case. And these other things, they're a political party. They are allowed to do. They are allowed to do the politics. We can also, from our own political parties, doing our own politics and propaganda. But we must stick to facts because that's what the facts that matter. What propaganda they sell to try to sell to South Africans or to their constituency, it's another thing. The ANC and other parties who do not agree will have to deal with that propaganda of the DA.
And I suppose the question then arises from some, and it arose again today, to say that these are your colleagues in government, and one wonders then what does it mean for the government of national unity, especially when you continue to speak in different voices. You can't escape that one, Minister, but honestly, how do South Africans who are watching you and I today process all of this that is happening and actually say that there is coherence within the government of national unity?
So don't confuse the political parties and the government of national unity. There are political parties who are represented in parliament, who are part of the parliament of unity. They've got their own policies, they influence each other. Then there's a government. Government will take our decisions in cabinet. I speak on behalf of cabinet. I've never come out and every Thursday after cabinet and say this is the position of cabinet. There's never been a minister of cabinet, whether coming from the DA, coming from the ANC, coming from the PA, coming from the IFP, coming from the PAC, who say, oh, coming from Minister Delin, they've never come out and said that's not the government position as agreed at cabinet. And that symbolizes the unity and cohesion of government to say, as we get to cabinet, and by the way, in cabinet, so there's no such thing as, oh, the ANC are winning the decisions because there's a majority vote. There's no such a thing as a vote. It's by consensus. We come out and say this is the position. That's why even the time when they came out and claimed that we didn't agree during the first debate, that we didn't agree, we said, but you're lying. And everybody came out and said, no, they're lying, we had agreed. We said it's not ideal, but we had agreed because we said we want this, what we wanted to advance. But cabinet decisions, we are all agreed, and we come out and we speak in unison. And that's what represents cohesion of government. What political parties do, political parties have constituencies. It doesn't mean tomorrow, there will be 2026, there will be local government elections. There are by-elections every month or every week across the country. The ANC, the DA, the PAC, the AFP, they still contest each other in those by-elections. The government of national unity has not subsumed political parties to become one voice and to agree on policy positions.
All right, Minister, I'm going to let you go for now, but hold you to your PhD. You and I still need to engage on it because I do think there is some interesting insight there that I'd really like to pick your brain on. But thank you so much for talking to us. Appreciate your time. That was Minister in the Presidency there, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. Let's take some of your comments this evening as we're asking you if you believe that the draft policy directive for the ICT sector is sound and was carefully considered. Let's take a look at some of your X's. And of course, Michael Helu saying the draft ICT policy directive raises important questions about equitable access and digital transformation. While there are some strong goals, it's unclear if the voices of ordinary users and workers were truly considered. We need inclusive consultation before the rollout. Mian saying that the draft policy is needed for South Africa to achieve technological improvement and advancement. Without it, we will never get ahead of the disadvantage caused by apartheid-era sanctions. Rabutata, ICT draft policy is sound and carefully considered. The Portfolio Committee has a vendetta against the minister. We need developments in this country and not funny squabbles. And it's interesting that, Rabutata, you make that comment because when you look at what the minister has to say, it's how do you then balance the two to ensure that the issue of transformation is in fact not one that is prejudiced in this country. We'll look at that with some of our guests in just a moment. Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Malatsi briefed Parliament today on the draft policy directive relating to the ICT sector. Malatsi was summoned was invited by the committee following the publication of new policy directives relating to the equity equivalence investment program as well and applications for the licensing in the ICT sector. Now, concerns have been raised over whether these directives allow for preferential treatment for Elon Musk's Starlink. Let's have this conversation now with a policy and governance analyst, Swana. Mr. Swana, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. So, when you look at some of the views from our viewers tonight so far, you have a Mian, for example, who says that this is good, and but there needs to be issues that are going to be looked at, particularly when it comes to transformation, guard against regressing in this particular sector. But at the same time, then you have Rabutata, who says that it seems that the committee may have a personal vendetta against the minister because some of these draft policy directives, in fact, according to him, may be good because we need improvements in the sector. What's your take on what came out from Parliament today?
Thank you, Bongiwe, and good evening to your viewers. The first thing that we must accept is that there were two proposals, if you want to call them that, or draft policy directives. The first one is pretty straightforward because there were findings that were made by the Competition Commission that the sector is, let's call it not competitive enough, and also there are pricing problems in the sector. Now, that came from the Competition Commission, and the reactions to that have not been done. So all that the minister asked for is for ICASA to go and do an inquiry, a study, to determine what must be done about what the findings of the Competition Commission were. So I don't think there should be controversy about that. Then the second one, which I think needs further discussion, and that discussion is going to be long because I think we need clarification, first of all, whether the procedure that the minister is following right now is the correct procedure. For instance, some will say there should be an outright amendment of the law if we're going to do what he's doing, because what he wants to do is not stated in the Act, in the Electronic Communications Act. Then there is his proposal that no, he must just issue a policy directive and make arrangements, quick arrangements for all kinds of low Earth orbit satellites companies to start operating in South Africa. So that will need proper legal guidance. And then there are obviously the moral and political questions around that. The moral and political questions is that in that chapter where BEE is discussed, it actually appears several times that there must be empowerment for the historically disadvantaged groups. And then the paragraph that is creating the controversy is that the Act is actually quite explicit that there should be 30% shareholding. And that is the part that the minister is trying to change.
So when we talk about equity equivalence, and that's exactly where you've gone to now, what exactly do we mean by it, particularly for somebody who's watching tonight who says, what does it all mean? Because if we talk about 30% ownership, it's quite clear what you mean, but what then should, maybe let's say this draft policy comes into play, what does it mean to say that there's equity equivalent?
There's a theoretical description of this, let's put it that way, because I don't think we can say there's a hard, evidentially based definition of this. And I'll explain why. So if you say I was going to give you 30% shareholding in this company, then I don't want to give you the shareholding. Remember that the shareholding gives you the share of profits, 30% of the share of profits, 30% voting rights, and various participations that are provided for in the Companies Act. Now, I then say I'm not going to give you those shares which come with those rights and financial benefits, including share of profits. Instead, I'm going to give you something equivalent. But then when you go to the reports, and there's only one report that is available, it was last prepared in 2022. So a company can say, we will contribute 4% of our revenues towards the empowerment, let's say skills development of the Black community or the empowerment of SMMEs and so on. So it's something like that. So mathematically, there's no board, there's no economist in South Africa or chartered accountant who has actually confirmed that this alternative that Malatsi wants to propose in the 22 cases that are recorded actually gave the Black community the same value as if they had shares. So it's called equivalent. When something is equivalent, the value must basically be equivalent or equal to be actually quite exact. And the reports that I have seen, it's very far, it's not actually close. So the comrades and the GNU and everybody else needs to actually get proper economists and chartered accountants to actually show them how do you make things equivalent. Because the way they've designed it now is actually, to my mind, not equivalent.
So when you look at the minister, because he speaks about the fact that there is nothing untoward about the timing here. He says that this process has been in the works for months now, and the fact that it now happens at this point when the delegation would have come back from the US is actually not related. It's a process that has been taking time. How easy will it be for him to convince South Africans that this is in fact the case? Because many are saying this does seem to be suspect when it comes to the timing.
Yes, so Bongwe, there are political issues. That's one of them that we are raising. And it's a bigger political issue because earlier today I was involved in a continental discussion, African continental discussion about the same issue. And the conclusion is that Elon Musk and Donald Trump have muscled, I think they are at about 18 now, of African countries to accept under extreme pressure to accept Starlink. We know that our president, when he visited the so-called Oval Office, he had to duck behind 4 white men to be safe in that place. So there is extreme pressure and extreme coercion around this. We can also accept then Malachi's explanation that it is just a coincidence. We will accept it for now until whatever he's hiding comes out into the open.
But the minister and the presidency, we just spoke to her. She says it's not the case. She says Starlink didn't come up behind closed doors. Are you disputing this?
That whose Starlink did not come in behind which closed doors?
So the minister and the presidency, we just spoke to her. She says that there was no coercion here. She says, in fact, the issue of Starlink did not come up when they were discussing in the White House about the issues of trade in South Africa. Are you disputing that? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I am shaking my head. The only thing that is relevant in what she's saying is that they were not intimidated on that day, at that time. The fact that they were intimidated is not in dispute, and I will explain this. So when you read the documentation from the US government, including the draft bill on the review of bilateral relations and other related documents, you see that there is an objection from the Americans that we have, as South Africans, we are wrong in actually relying our ICT sector on Chinese technologies. So they want a piece of the action of our ICT sector. That they have stated explicitly. When I talk about intimidation, South Africa had not done anything wrong to the Americans. We had not supplied them fake goods or low quality or failed to deliver on time or anything. Since 1871, we've been trading with these people. Out of the blue, they launched the most extreme tariff war against us when we have not provoked them in any way in relative to commerce and trade. So then on top of that, they said that they have a list of senior ANC members that they would like to sanction at an individual level. And believe me, Ramaphosa was top of that list. So if Ramaphosa would have appeared in any way concerned or fearful when he was in the United States and almost begging, it was because the gun of sanctions was pointed at him and a number of comrades. I'm sure Mbalula was saying, please, President, get it right. We don't want to be sanctioned in our individual capacity.
So then how then do you begin to, process this trip? Because the South African delegation says this trip was a success, and they say that they were able to, achieve much, especially when you read the president's letter as well. It says just as much.
Yes, of course. I expected a few things to be achieved. And remember that, when you get what you had before, you can say that you are successful. We've been trading with the United States since 1871. So if somebody starts a trade war against us and then stops the trade war, and then we say we've achieved something, he unilaterally did that for certain reasons which we have not yet even discussed in this show. Maybe we will not even discuss them. It may not even be necessary.
Yeah.
So they started the trade show. What I expected is this, when they went there, is that, number one, the people who are actually trading, the companies that are trading with the United States are the companies that belong to white Afrikaners, the wine farmers and all those types of people. Then you have also a number of American companies, including Ford Motor Company, that are selling a lot of goods to the United States. And they are American, others are European. Automakers, and so on and so forth. These are not black companies that are trading with the United States. And the philosophy of Trump is to protect whites. The philosophy of Trump is to protect white supremacy. The Make America Great Again is, as Ibrahim Rasool clarified it, and Joel Netshitenze clarified it as well, and I'll simplify it here, is that Make America Great Again is also about making whites of Western origin, white Christian origin, great wherever they are, superior to everybody else, a white supremacy agenda. So I expected Trump to actually, he can't kill that trade. It's his people. These are the people he wants to protect. There's no doubt about that. He wouldn't have killed that trade. So the only thing is that he would have given them that. The only thing remaining was whether he was going to implement individual sanctions against Ramaphosa and company.
So briefly, just before I let you go in about 30 seconds, the DA Federal Council, in another matter today, released a statement saying that they've affirmed their long-standing party position, rejecting nil compensation as far as the Expropriation Act is concerned. What is your take on this particular issue? Because we do know the party is opposed to this, but it continues then to raise some questions for some as to what does it mean then for the dynamics within the Government of National Unity?
Well, there will be all kinds of dynamics. I think, to me, when Standard Bank published their findings on saying that they are not worried about the act, including the so-called nil compensation and so on, that they feel that their risk is secure, that issue is settled. The DA is actually playing to the gallery of Trump, Make America Great Again, or to use Joel Netshitenze's language, Make Apartheid Great Again. This is a white supremacist agenda. That is all that there is to it. There's no intellectual merit to it. There's no jurisprudence in it. There's just nothing there. It's a waste of time.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Policy and governance analyst Sandile Swana. On the other side of the break, we speak to the Democratic Alliance. Thanks for staying with us. The Democratic Alliance Federal Council has affirmed its position to oppose land expropriation without compensation. The DA Federal Council chairperson Helen Zille saying in a statement earlier that the party wanted to secure private property rights. Let's take and with President Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, signing the Expropriation Act on January the 23rd. We're now joined by the DA spokesperson, Vili Aucamp. Vili, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. In just a short while ago, we had a conversation with a governance analyst, Sandile Swana, who says that, in fact, what you're trying to do is to, bring back apartheid, continue with the white supremacist approach when he is, of course, looking at, some of what came out from your resolutions. What's your response?
That's absolutely not true. The Democratic Alliance has always stood up for the Constitution of this country. All laws must adhere to the Constitution, and that is what we are testing in this court case that we are doing. We're not trying to stand up for one specific race group. We're not trying to stand up for the interest of a specific industry. We are standing up for the protection of the constitutional rights of all South Africans. If Mrs. Swana then feels that we are doing it to protect whites, he should go and look at the Constitution and what the Constitution specifically in Section 25 say, and then go and measure that to the court case that the Democratic Alliance has brought. And he will see that what we are saying in this court case are precisely there to adhere to the Constitution. We have in many cases in the past tested things in the courts. It is our right as a political party. Everybody has got that right. And we believe that we will be successful in fighting for the protection of property rights of all South Africans. We must also remember, Bongiwe, we're not only talking about farms or fixed property. We're talking about all types of property. It might be that tomorrow somebody gets an idea with regards to IT and he patents that. That is property. That can be expropriated. Whether that person is a black person or a white person, it's irrelevant. We've got to protect the property rights as enshrined in the Constitution for every single South African.
So, Vili, help me here, because I was a little confused, right, when I was reading the statement earlier on, because it speaks about property rights, as you say, and the fact that the party wants to make sure that everything is just and equitable. But when I take a step back to a statement you released earlier this year as the Democratic Alliance on this particular matter, and I go through your court challenge as well when it comes to the issue of expropriation, the process of adopting the act was quite central, with the fact that you were questioning the mandate of, some of the provinces there as far as this issue was adopted to begin with. So, pardon me, because there's a bit of confusion now to say that now, when you look at what is coming out from the Federal Council, it centers around the property rights, but then earlier on it was about the provinces. Which is it?
Our court case is based on two legs. The one, as you just now mentioned, is more technical of nature. It is the fact that the NCOP, when they deliberated on this, they should have gotten the mandates from each province. And the act is very clear that they must have a physical sitting, whether it's online or physical, but I mean, there must be a sitting of that specific legislature, which then mandates their representative in the NCOP to form a certain line or vote in a certain way. In 5 of the 9 provinces, that did not happen. They did not have a sitting. So the act was adopted irregularly. They should have had sittings. But that is on the technical point. That is the one leg that our court case is based upon. The other leg is the unconstitutionality with regards to the contents of certain aspects of the act itself, specifically when it comes to the issue of courts. We've got in Section 8 or Clause 8 of this Act, one thing with regards to when a court can come in and determine the value, and in Section 19 and 20, it says something else. The Act should not speak against itself. It should be consistent. So there are constitutionality issues with regard to that as well. Again, I want to bring all of this back to the Constitution. The Constitution outlines the processes that must be followed when acts are enacted by Parliament and signed by the President. So that is what the first part is based on. And the second part is also based on the unconstitutionality of other parts of the Act itself. So the whole case that the DA is bringing is centered around the constitutionality issues that we've got with the Act.
And when you listen to the President earlier on in his interaction with journalists, he says that, in fact, it's good that there are many voices here, but the critical aspect here of getting the courts involved is that the courts will be able to determine some of, the issues that you're talking about as far as compensations is concerned, as far as some of the sticking points or whether issues, come to a head. The courts will be able to come here and ensure that things are done in a democratic process. Who do you not have faith in here? Is it your own minister that is going to need to now be the one that carries this forward through the department, or is it the courts that you are not having confidence in?
It is the act that we do not have confidence in. We have got confidence in the courts. That is why we approach them. We have confidence in the minister that he will draft the norm, standards and regulations that will, to the best of his ability, implement this act as far as possible in conjunction with the Constitution. The problem that we've got is with the act in itself that is unconstitutional, as I've mentioned before. So that is what we've got to address. That is what we took to court. We did not take the president in his personal capacity or the minister to court. We took the unconstitutionality of this to court, and obviously there must then be defenders on that. But that is what we are taking on. And we believe that we will be successful in this because the Constitution is the supreme law of this country, and we've got to protect everybody's rights in terms of the Constitution.
And what happens if you're not?
Well, if we are not, then we'll have to look at that. If we are a constitutional democracy, if the Constitutional Court rules against us, or if during the process it will end up at the Constitutional Court and there's a judgment against us, we've got to take it from there. But I firmly believe that we will be successful.
Are you prepared for that reality, that it may not go your way? Have you prepared yourself as a Democratic Alliance, should it happen?
I think you can never enter a court case in any spectrum whatsoever and be 100% confident. You might tell that to yourself, but you've got to prepare yourself for if you are not. Why we are so confident is if you go and read the Constitution, it is clear-cut. Provinces must have a meeting in the legislature to get a mandate. It cannot simply be that the speaker of that legislature sign a document without there being a sitting. That is clear-cut, that is evidence, it's there, it's true. So I believe that we will be successful on that leg alone. But obviously you've got to prepare yourself should you not be successful. But I think you must have confidence as well, and we do have a world of confidence with regards to this.
Please indulge me further. If you are not successful, are you prepared to abide by this act?
Obviously, if the Constitutional Court rule against us, we've got to abide by that. It's as easy as that. We are a constitutional democracy. The Democratic Alliance is a party that will fight for the supreme rule of the Constitutional Court and our Constitution. So if they do rule against us, we definitely abide by that. I just don't think that they will rule against us.
Again, the question about the dynamics within the government of national unity have come up again, right? To say that if now you are releasing this particular statement that reiterates your stance against the Expropriation Act, what does it mean then for the dynamics within the government of national unity? And is that the reason why Minister John Steenhuisen did not indulge the issue of the Expropriation Act in the Oval Office?
When we entered the government of national unity, we all knew that there will be times that we will differ with each other. We all knew that we won't all get our way with everything. And one thing that was made very clear is that each party within this GNU will maintain its own identity. And that is exactly what happens here. We are in this government of national unity. There will be a lot of instances that we will agree with each other, but there will be instances where we disagree with each other. And then obviously, again, we can look at the Constitution as our supreme guidance with regards to this. And that is exactly what we are doing here. I can't tell you with regards to the second part of your question. I don't know what the discussions were that happened behind the scenes.
But
I know Minister Steenhuisen had about 2 minutes.
In front of cameras, pardon me, in front of cameras, really, because right there, it had to take the COSATU president to clarify what the issue was with regards to expropriation. And she even said that she would have expected the minister to touch on this issue. So a couple of days later, post this meeting, we now see a reaffirming of the stance on expropriation by the Democratic Alliance. One can then maybe marry the two to say that he didn't want to talk about this in the Oval Office because he knew the statement was coming a couple of days later. Are we correct in that assertion?
Not at all. Not at all. You must remember Minister Steenhuisen spoke on the invitation of President Ramaphosa. And at that specific point during the conversation in the White House, The point under discussion was farm murders, farm attacks, alleged genocide. That was the point under discussion when
It was
President
also the point that
Ramaphosa
their
invited
farms are being
Mr.
taken
Steenhuisen
by
to speak.
force.
He spoke on that point. Sorry, say again?
It was also the fact that the farms were being taken away from them, that land was being taken. They did mention it in all that was happening there.
Yeah, that was afterwards that it was mentioned, but be that as it may, he had 2 minutes to address it. I think he would have loved to have 10 minutes and he would have been able to address all the issues. But the most pressing issues at that stage in the discussion in the White House was certainly the safety effects and the fact that people felt that they've got to flee as refugees. That was the pressing issue. And I'm quite sure that the whole issue with regards to expropriation and the property rights were discussed afterwards. But if you've got 2 minutes to address something, you can certainly not touch on all the things. I think it was very important for Minister Steenhuisen to show President Trump that the two individuals, Mr. Malema and Mr. Zuma, are leaders of minority parties, because he said that they were part of government and they are not. So I think it was very important for Mr. Steenhuisen to make those points and to also say that farm murders, farm attacks are a reality, and he wants it to be declared as a priority crime. But it is not only farm murders that's a problem in South Africa. We do have a crime problem, and he addressed all of those.
Yeah. Really, you speak about 2 minutes. I'm being told in my ear that I'm even out of time. My 2 minutes expired a short while ago. So thank you so much for talking to us. As always, appreciate your time. That was the DA spokesperson, Vili Aucamp there. And that's how we come to the end of Face the Nation today. Thank you so much for keeping up with us. Of course, different conversations that had to take place tonight. Clement will be with you on Thursday. Good night.